Welcome, everyone. So excited to see you all. Thank you so much for joining the session. So, today's theme is going to be from C-suits to builder, and I have the best possible speaker that I could ever wish for. So, I invited Deb Liu. Deb Liu, for those that don't know her, she has 20 plus years in tech and product leadership. She was at Meta, PayPal, eBay, and then became CEO of Ancestry.com from 2021. She's also a board advisor, investor, and now the co-founder of a fantastic AI tool. And I really wanted to invite her as part of this series I have called I Builder to talk to us about her story, her builder mindset, her leadership, how things are changing in this AI era. So, with that said, thank you for so much for joining us, Deb.
It's wonderful to be here, Marilee.
All right, so let's start. I have a series of questions, and we would love to take questions from everyone that's in the audience. So if you have questions, please type in the chat. But the first question is, Deb, what is the definition of a builder versus a manager or an executive? And how has that definition evolved for you now that you're looking at AI and product at scale?
Well, I think one of the biggest changes that are happening is, when I started my career in product, it was 2002. It's a really long, long time ago. And, when you wanted to build a product, you wrote a spec. Then it went to a designer, and then, they would write a QA spec. The engineers would split it up and write, maybe a technical spec. And but you were close to the product. You knew exactly what's going in. And over the years, as you rise in the organization, many of you become managers, you get further and further away from the product, right? You now are reading people's specs, you are organizing strategies, you're figuring out, and you just get so much further away from what building really is. And then when you become an executive, you're so far away from the product that, you're far away from the customer, you're far away from the product, and everything becomes almost conceptual. And so, one of the things I talk about being a builder is like hands-on day to day, are you affecting what customers are seeing? That's what I call a builder. And I feel like, we build these modern organizations where, success is getting as far away from that as possible. And yet, with the time of AI now, getting back close to the metal, actually understanding what customers are seeing, that's an essential skill that I feel like we lost. And I hope that a lot of, those who have gone through the ranks are coming back to that because that's a really, really important skill that I feel like you lose over the years.
Yeah, I definitely see the dawn of the AI builder. I know we wrote a newsletter together on that concept, and yeah, it's definitely what I see emerging as well. All right, so let's see. I was looking at your background, and Deb, you moved from engineering at Duke and Stanford to product roles like PayPal and eBay to building at Facebook. And then you stepped into the C-suite, so you were the CEO of Ancestry. So what was the single most pivotal moment or decision that shifted you from being a builder inside companies to being a builder of companies? I would
Yeah.
love to hear what happened.
Well, I think that the first time you manage somebody, you realize that you are no longer hands-on because you're leading through somebody else. You're no longer, leading directly. And it puts a distance, right? You're not, you're not leading the product. You're not leading the customer. You're now leading a team. You're leading through others. And I think that that moment when I became a manager, I remember telling my manager at the time, I had, a couple APMs, and I'm like, I could do this so much faster than them. This is taking so long to teach somebody else. And I realized I wasn't scaling. And so I had to like learn to let go. And that is, by the way, an important management skill. And yet looking back, I think that in learning to let go, it's like, how do you stay and inspire people and lead through others and teach them how to be great practitioners when you yourself are losing track of what it is to be a practitioner. But I think once I became a manager and then I became the manager of managers and then the managers of, teams and organizations and eventually I had hundreds of people, if not thousands of people, over 1,000 people reporting to me. You now suddenly shift from, product to process to systems to companies. And you're leading, by the time you're an executive, you're leading culture. And so, the things that you do, the things that you say and do matter so much more because it sets the tone for what others choose to do on a day-to-day basis. And so I do think that that's an important part of what we really need to think about as you shape your career is like, what is the thing, what is the practical thing that you're actually touching, and what are you impacting every single day?
So can you tell us more about now? What are you using to build? What have you learned?
Well, the thing is, like, after I stepped down, I was at Ancestry for 4 years. I loved the company and the product. And, at the beginning of March, I stepped down and I said, this is going to be my year of yes. I'm going to say yes to a lot of things, try a bunch of things that I've never tried before. I did a TEDx talk. I'm writing another book. I continue to work on my blog. And, I was executive producing my friend's show and some other things. And what's really important is, I missed building. And so I took a boot camp and I was building again. And I was building with my kids. And in fact, AI has made it possible for even kids to take an idea to production, which is so fascinating because things that I think that we forget how far we've come. So when I was part of, for example, I was working back in the day when, the early internet, right? It was like when Macy's went online. That was like a revolutionary moment. And yet you look at these, internet native companies that have come along since then and how far they've come and how much of the traditional retailers are no longer existing in the same way, right? Like
Yeah.
stores aren't existing in the same way. Then, came along, for example, like AWS. That was 2006. Suddenly, you don't need a server that, we used to have for our website used to have a server that was in my
Yeah.
sister's, my sister's room, the mother's room that they had to keep cool because we were like, you couldn't just easily get a server. And then suddenly AWS made it possible not to have a sysadmin database, like you could build something immediately and launch it. And with mobile, that changed distribution. Suddenly distribution models changed. And so we see these revolutions come along and who emerges and what happens is so powerful. But they're the companies that are most successful are the ones who are really native and thinking about that. Think about some of the most successful mobile companies. You can't have Uber without the mobile platform because you need GPS, you need location, you need all those things, right? You can't, there's just so many things that come along that make it possible. Could you ship things at scale before Amazon? Yes, but it was very slow. But they changed that whole, they were in many ways, they're not just a product company, they're a logistics company. They made it possible and technology made that possible. And they undergirded that with AWS. And so, with this revolution, it's going to be really interesting to see what emerges because it's not necessarily going to be the companies just, I worry a lot of companies are like, let's just sprinkle some AI and say we're done. Because that's what a lot of companies do. They're like,
Yeah.
we'll just add 5%. But the companies that were succeeded in mobile, the ones who went all in. When I was
Yeah.
at Facebook, there was a time when Mark said, you know what? Everybody needs to have every deck has to be mobile first because all of our products were desktop. We were all desktop product managers. We built it. I was asked to work on a mobile product. I'm like, I just don't do mobile. And at the time, it turns out that that's the whole company. And so the hard pivot was everybody needs to move and everybody needs to move now. And so, there are going to be a lot of companies that you guys work at who are just like, well, just sprinkle a little, just use some ChatGPT here and some Claude there, and then we're all set. When in actuality, it's the people who actually embed native AI into their processes are willing to make bold bets where you're going to see the biggest differences. And really having builders there who are willing to build from the ground up, not just say, hey, we're just going to add 5% over here and 10% over there. I think that's why a lot of the projects fail. It's because it's not deeply embedded in the culture and the operation.
Absolutely. Operations is a big deal. And I see in the chat, like a lot of people say, look, building sounds like a trade. So with that said, how do you keep learning and upskilling yourself in the AI era? And what skills do you see are essentials to be able to build with AI?
Well, what's interesting is the old way of doing things is changing so fast. By the way, Gemini today, like every week, something new comes
Yeah.
along and suddenly everything changes and then it changes again and it changes again. And
Yep.
things that would have taken 10 years are now like, it seems like the news that would have been, monumental is happening so fast. And I think that that's part of what we are really, seeing is how quickly things are iterating. And so stay on top of the news, understand what's happening, adapt. And I think those who are most adaptable, those who are willing to learn the fastest and easiest are going to have the most impact for sure.
Yeah. Being adaptable. And the thing I tell my students at the bootcamp is that don't get married to a specific tool. Sure, there are tools I absolutely love, but they're all solving for a little piece. Nothing is really taking me all the way there. So I'll just stay open, keep experimenting until that one big thing comes that you will say, okay, this is it. This is what I want to use. All right. So for people that do see themselves as builders, and we have folks here, like we have engineers, PMs, founders, product leads, but have not had C-suite titles, what mindset mindset shifts or moves do you recommend to think and build like an executive without
Yeah.
losing, though, the boots on the ground kind of builder DNA, let's say?
Well, I think that one of the things that is different when you're in an organization is you have a very strict role, right? You are the, technical program manager for, risk and payments
Right.
in Latin America, right? You have a specialized skill. As you rise in the ranks, you have to generalize, right? You are now like, questions that we had to answer was like, which days off we're gonna take. What is our policy from working from home versus being in the office. Like you're suddenly asked questions like, what kind of insurance should we have? You actually become a generalist again the further up you go because now you're asked to lead teams, you're asked to like which tools we should use, things like that. But
People.
I think what makes people really good at their job is that there's a U-shaped hole in the organization. They build a thing that's like their moat is that I'm so good at being the TPM for risk in Latin America that no one else can do this job. And yet what is required now is looking more broadly because the roles are collapsing. So, it used to be there was a picture that somebody drew in an executive meeting. We were doing budgeting for the year, and they drew a picture of a product manager, and then they drew a picture of some engineers, and then they're like, and then you have a designer, and you have a researcher, and you have a content strategist and an analyst, and they drew like TPM, and they drew like product marketing all the way around, and they said a PM can't even go to the bathroom without an entourage. And what had happened was these roles become super hyper specialized. You go, larger organizations, you suddenly have someone who specializes in everything. And it creates this barrier to getting things done because if you don't get so and so's buy in and so is not assigned to your project, you can't and many of you have felt that before. But in smaller organizations, we're seeing that collapsing completely because with AI,
Yep.
do you need a dedicated researcher at the start when you could say prototype something and show it to customers? The researcher could do that and actually build a prototype and actually do the work of a product manager as well. Do
Yep.
you need a designer to build perfect Figma files when you could use AI and, do a V1 and show it to some people? I think that what's happening is that role is changing so fast. And the thing that's like a U-shaped hole is now collapsing. And I talk to a lot of executives and these product leaders, and they're like, we don't think that the roles are nearly as distinct anymore. They're just one person who's doing multiple roles, much like startups. And I think that
Yep.
that's what's happening is now like the hyper specialization, which makes you great at a big company, becomes a detriment when you need athletes who are willing to adapt to the tools, who are willing to change as quickly as possible.
There's people nodding, saying yes. Some people actually say yes and they're muted. There's people saying yes, this is like a bell curve. So yeah, makes perfect sense. The roles are merging, and not just that, you see that new positions that come out in big tech and startups as well, they have a new interviewing style. So you need to be AI fluent. You need to be able to use AI prototyping tools. You really need to speak this language and be a builder to pass any sort of interview. So let's see. There is a question in the audience that I'd like to read. So, as a PM who's looking to adopt new AI tools, are there any you would avoid or any red flags in current tools? That is a very good question, Mike.
Well, there's a huge proliferation of tools, and you don't have to be great at all of them. You have to understand what it is that you need. What problem are you trying to solve? What is the job to be done, and make sure that you're using the right tool for the right job. And I think a lot of times we treat AI like it's this monolith, but it's like the internet. It's a lot of things, and it can
Yeah.
do a lot of things. And so, really deeply understanding what are you trying to solve? What is the skill you're trying to learn, and how do you get there using the tools? I love just seeing kind of people using tools in different ways and technologies in different ways. And it allows us to really adapt to what are the problems we want to solve in the world. And those tools are going to evolve, by the way. Some of the tools that are really famous today have been around for what, 2, 3 years? These
Yeah. Yeah.
companies. And so you just see how fast the industry is moving. And so don't stick to a specific tool, stick to what you want to learn. And the tools will change quickly, and you just need to adapt with it. And yesterday Sonnet 4 was the latest hotness, and now Gemini 3. It's like
Gemini 3,
and
yeah.
they will continue to leapfrog. And I don't think that you need brand loyalty. What you need is the job to be done. Like what gets the job done the best, and what's going to
Yeah.
solve your problems, and how are you going to distinguish yourself as a leader?
And there are tools coming out just because of what you said. There is like a tool called LM Arena where you literally type a query and then you get the output and you get to vote left or right, which one is better, and ranking and all these things. It's just this domino effect that kind of keeps happening. So that's interesting. So Deb, what are you up to now? What are you working on?
Well, so, one of the things that I did was I did this boot camp and I realized that, anyone should be able to build. I did it with my kids and they each built a project, which they were able to ship. I'm still working on one with my daughter, who is 14. And, it's a use case. I asked her to be my social media manager and she's like, why don't we build a tool to do it? So we've been working on this for some time and hopefully we'll launch it by the end of the year when we have a little bit of time around the holidays. But I want to teach the kids how to actually build again. I feel like for a long time it was like things were specialized so much. And so I'm really excited to do that. My daughter is deploying her project, which she's doing for her
Wow.
senior capstone, and she's really excited. It's about data and college applications. And my son did a website for his tutoring business. He is teaching SAT and ACT if you guys need any help. Anyways, and so one of the things that they did was I just saw what's powerful about vibe coding, but I realized something, which is nobody vibe codes, so they want to learn a vibe code. Everyone's like, oh, I want to vibe. Literally zero people vibe code because they want to vibe code. They want to build something.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
tools are so limited in what you can build. And so one of the things I did was I took this boot camp, then I started working with the person who created the boot camp to build a platform where you can actually full stack deploy your project. And when you need help, you call for engineering help. And so that's what we've been working on. We're kind of in stealth, so you guys know about it, but it's not widely public. But what's interesting is just seeing people who had struggled to get something deployed get it deployed, because I ran into this issue where I spent 3 hours trying to debug some issue, and it turns out that my CSS was missing some variable on some file that I couldn't figure out.
Yeah.
And I spent 3 hours and many tokens, by the way. I tried like Claude Code, I tried like ChatGPT, I tried everything. And finally it pinged. So in our platform, there's a way to ping an engineer. And I just said, I'm desperate. It is like Saturday night. I'm trying to get this done so I could work with my daughter tomorrow, but I cannot figure this out. She had banged her head against it too. And 15 minutes later, he fixed it. He's like, you're missing this one variable. And I was like, how would I have figured it out? And I feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the problem with vibe coding and all of these tools is that it's not getting you to they're getting you to the first aha moment, which is you can visualize it. But the building part is so limited. And so one of the things we want to do is build a platform where people can see their projects come to life, including my kids who
Yeah.
are not coders at all, and really be able to deploy and run, a business. Like, she's excited about like marketing and selling this to people, not by coding. So
I mean, it's amazing, right? Having like even a teenager being able to actually visualize and get their idea out of the door. And what you say makes perfect sense. Like we need to stop half building and we need to stop kind of abandoning these projects. If you go on my some of these tools, you'll see I have like at least 10 projects I tried to launch and then I got stuck and got bored and got out. So um, but I'm excited. And one of the reasons I wanted to invite you to this talk is because Deb has graciously opened up a stealth mode of her tool in my bootcamp, and anyone that joins in December cohort will get to actually get free access for a month to this tool. They'll get to deploy their idea end to end. And for this week, we have 25% off, and I just posted the link. We also do B2B trainings. So if you're interested for your companies and your teams, we come into your work. We actually help you just create the productivity tools you need in order to integrate them within your own company. So if you're interested, click on that Maven link. If you want to talk about B2B, reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. And I'm just so excited. I think being in the Bay Area when this kind of AI explosion is happening and getting to see what Dev is working on has just been tremendous. So with that said, I think there are a couple of more questions that I want to take, and
yeah,
then we're going to go on the lightning round and we're going to let you go, Deb. All right, let's see.
okay.
So Gabby says, how do you see the roles of PMs and devs evolving with builder mentality growing and vibe coding tools becoming more prevalent? Yeah, that's a
Well,
good.
first, yeah, I think that, the role is going to blur over time. I do think more devs are going to, learn things like design, for example, user research, data, because now, it's taking less time to code. You're not splitting the code amongst 10 people trying to get this thing over 6 months. I remember when I used to build stuff, it was like the estimates were like 18 months to build something. right? And you now you can give V1 out in like weeks, and a couple months, and it's just amazing what's happening. But then it frees people's time to really think about the problems. What problem are we trying to solve? One of the things I think is important, and is a lot of I remember when I worked with a lot of developers, they were really excited about building, but my job as their PM was to help them understand why. So having them meet with customers, having them talk to advertisers, having them to and they were like, oh, this makes so much more sense in that context. But we had split the job up into these like, it's like you're building a car and you just like, it just the car moves along and all you do is you screw in that one seat. Like no one person can build a car anymore. And I felt like we did that with technology. We just split it up so much that people were no longer in touch with the customer. And I think as we collapse that again, I hope that that gets us close to the customers. We're building things that are of value that people are willing to invest time and pay for. And I think that that's a great thing. I do
Yes.
worry a little bit about vibe coding, though, is that, if PMs are vibe coding, do they really understand some of the risks also? Right? Are they leaving a hole where people can like download PII? Are they thinking about, GDPR? How do you build safeguards? And one of the things on our platform is really important is that we can build some safeguards, which is like, hey, we can build in penetration testing that says, by the way, you have this severe vulnerability. You
Sure.
should probably have an engineer fix this. Like one of the things that we want to do is actually help people not make so many mistakes. Because often, if you build poorly, you can see some of the things that have happened. Like I think there was a study that said something like 30% of vibe coded projects have like severe vulnerabilities. Well,
Oh my
that's
God.
not something that a PM would be able to figure out on their own. And so I do think that some of the opportunities are great, but also some of the risks are great as well.
Yes, and when I was using this platform, I felt more confident, safer. There was always someone that was an actual engineer to handhold me and take me to the last step. So it was phenomenal. All
And I
right,
was
so
working on my project and I realized that I didn't have a cookie banner. And I said, hey, by the way, I sent him the California, data privacy thing. And he was like, oh, okay, I'll add it for you. And then today, like a banner showed up and I was like, oh, because I was like, how would I have coded? Would I have done that right? But I finally just had the engineer do it because I was like, I'm worried that if I screw up, because it's not just the banner, it
yeah,
also is how you have to store the bit for the banner, for the cookie banner. And then, it's like if you say, don't track me and you accidentally track them like a really bad thing. And so I had
yeah,
the engineer do that because I'm like, I don't trust that I'm going to vibe code that correctly. And I don't want to make a mistake there, especially since, I'm from California and it's, we don't want my daughter to get in trouble. And so one of the things that's really important is really thinking through some of these things and then having help when the time comes so that you're not going to screw it
yeah.
up.
Yeah, and you can actually finish the project. And it's interesting how we're going from building with AI as a copilot to AI doing the work, and then we come in, or the engineer comes in to kind of finish it. So it's a very good times. Okay, I have a fun lightning round, and then we're gonna let you
Okay.
go, Gab. Okay, so first of all, what's one product you're currently building or would like to build if you had no constraints?
Well, one of the things okay, I hate posting on social media. Okay, so I have like a huge like following and stuff, but I hate like LinkedIn. Like I write, so I love writing, and so I have a Substack. If you want, it's debliu.substack. You can share the link. But basically, I love writing, but I hate publicizing the writing. The problem with Substack is the people who know you're there already know you're there. You have to spend so much work marketing. And I actually think there's a lot of people like me who write Substacks or, have blogs or write, beehives and thing, whatever, but they hate that. And I was like, how do you get an audience of people that care about you? And so that's what I'm working on with my daughter is like, how do you automate some of that stuff? Because I hate all of the turn this article and then I go to ChatGPT and I do it and then it's like, it's not great. And I was like, what
Yep.
if it's tuned to my voice, right? So I have somebody who helps me do the logistics, but I still have to do the writing. And I was like, I want a tool. So the tool she wants to create is it automatically extracts quotes and post for you so that it makes it a lot easier in your voice to post for the
Got it.
lazy and those who hate social media posting on social media because it's so much work. The part I love is writing.
Yep.
The part
Um,
you write a newsletter, so you know what that's like.
I know what it's like, and I hate it, especially when I have to, like promote my new article, and it's kind of like, ugh, how do I say this? And LinkedIn penalizes specific words. So I see if I use like join this link, they will not promote it. So it's kind of interesting. Anyways, so thank you. Second question, what is the most underrated builder tool or habit you rely on?
Well, so the thing I think that we forget is, again, I've met people who are AI native, and then even myself, I'm not that close, but like where they just think differently. And I think there's a lot of young people who just, it's a part of their day. They get a summary of like, here's all the things you're doing today. They like read the notes and summarize. I was like, wow, it's like having a second brain there. It
Yep.
seems exhausting in some ways, but at the same time, it's very refreshing to basically see what is possible, to say, hey, here's the things that you need to read ahead of time. Here's the things you need to do. And I think that that is something which I hope that I can adopt more.
Yeah. Very good point. And you know what? I have downloaded Comet from Perplexity and Atlas from OpenAI,
Oh,
and I haven't tried them out yet because I know they're going to change everything about how I browse the web. And I'm just so hesitant because it's this whole new world and I'm kind of waiting. Anyways, all right. And last question, looking back to your younger self in product and engineering, what would you tell young Deb and what would she think of you now?
I think, yeah, she'd be really surprised at how, I just went into build really cool products and I've had an amazing career. But the piece of advice I would give myself is always try to be learning. Fill your bingo card. I actually wrote this article about, when you're at your job, you just get better and better at your job. And you forget that there's a whole world out there. And it's very true, especially when you're in an all-encompassing company, when you're a very large company or you're at a startup. It's just like it sucks up 120% of your available capacity. Your RAM is like all booked. And I tell people like pick one or two things that is outside that you want to learn, that you want to do, that's going to make you better, make you more marketable, make you so it could be writing a newsletter. Writing a newsletter has taught me that I am really interested in a lot of things. And it forces me to go research the things that I'm really interested in. That's all it does. It's like I write it for
Yeah.
myself and for the people who read it. And then
Yeah.
there's like, for example, try something new, right? Learn, like, for example, your class, right? The vibe coding, like learn because if once you see what's possible, you are very surprised. It's like surprising what is actually possible once your eyes are opened. And then the aha moment is like, wow, here are 20 other things you can do. And so I encourage people like learn public speaking, like pick a thing, that you want to be better at over the next year. Pick that you're going to grow in and then find a way to like tap into that because the world is changing faster than ever before. And in some ways, we have so much to learn. And I worry it's easy to stagnate. If you just ignore everything, it's
Yeah.
easy to stagnate and not, learn to browse the web in a different way, not, adopt the latest tools because they said that people's music taste end at 35. Whatever you listen to when you were 35, you listen to for the rest of your life. And by the way, there will be a lot of Taylor Swift fans for the rest of the but I
Oh
mean,
my goodness.
basically, they said that you stop adopting anything new. And I worry a lot about us as an industry that like young people will come, they'll have new ideas, and then we'll be like, everybody will be stuck because we've stopped growing. And so
Stop
I think as
worrying.
an
Yeah.
industry, it's like continuous learning.
Continuous learning. I love it. All right, Deb, thank you so much. That was a lot of learnings. Everyone, if you want to try out Deb's new tool in December, join. We have 25% off for you and your teams. Reach out to me. The link is in the chat. I'm going to send a follow-up email with Deb's Substack and LinkedIn. And thank you all for joining so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Deb. Really appreciate you joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.